You know, I think LEGO learned the wrong lesson when it came to the UCS Millennium Falcon. Now, I don't know how many of you actually remember this, but 5 years ago, the hype for what would become the UCS Millennium Falcon was probably the most that I've ever seen for a LEGO set ever. People were building it up, no pun intended, for months, because there were all these rumors about it, like first that it would be the Falcon, and then even things like it would be the largest LEGO set ever. So when the UCS Millennium Falcon eventually did drop in 2017, well, that hype actually paid off with one huge catch. While it was going to be the largest LEGO set ever made, it would come at the cost of $800, making it the most expensive LEGO set ever made. Now, at the time, I was living with a roommate and we were discussing all of this, and he said something very interesting that has stuck with me today and is why I'm making this video, because he hoped that the UCS Millennium Falcon would not sell well. And just to be clear here, this guy would sell everything just for the chance to fly in a Millennium Falcon. This guy loves the Millennium Falcon more than anything else about Star Wars. So I was very surprised when he said this, but then he explained that it's because money talks. And if people went and bought the UCS Millennium Falcon and it sold well, then LEGO would probably see it as an opportunity to continue releasing larger and more expensive sets. Which now, 5 years later, is exactly what we're seeing happen. Earlier this week, as I'm certain you have already seen, LEGO announced their newest set in the UCS line, the Razor Crest of all things. Which is a weird choice, but I'll get into that. This set contains over 6,000 pieces and will sell for $600, which is just a ridiculous amount of money. And again, we'll get into that in just 1 second, but let me go back to the Millennium Falcon for a second here. Because in order to understand the problem that I and many people are having with this release, I want to better explain why the Millennium Falcon did sell well. I mean, 5 years later, it's still on shelves and people are still buying it. Like I said, the hype for it was incredible. And when it first came out, you had to be on a wait list. You could not just go into a store and buy it for like half a year afterwards. I would know. I worked at the LEGO store at that time. Once a week, we would only get in 24 UCS Falcons that we then had to call the people on the waitlist and have them come pick up and pay for it. Now, I happen to work inventory, and so for most of these people, I was there when they came in to pick up their set. Now, for a lot of these people, I would just ask like general questions for good customer service, but also because I was really interested in seeing why so many people were willing to spend so much money. So I would just like gauge the customer and see if they were excited to build it. I would ask if they had any plans, like were they going to build it 1 bag a day, or like what were they going to do? And I would always ask, why did they choose to get it? Now, a lot of the people went, well, because it's a UCS set and it's LEGO, which, yeah, okay. And a lot of people very specifically went, because it's the Millennium Falcon. And that fact is what is way more important here. The Millennium Falcon is like the Star Wars ship. I was going to say next to the Blockade Runner and the Star Destroyer, but honestly, I think the Falcon is just much more recognizable. I mean, it's been in 6 of the movies, 1 spin-off movie, and technically in Episode 3 if you count what George Lucas said. If you were to ask 100 people to name a ship from Star Wars, I bet you the majority would say the Millennium Falcon. But at that time, there was also a Millennium Falcon playset available on shelves, which, for the record, at least at my store, also sold very well. And that one sold for just over $100. So part of the question becomes, why did these people choose to spend $700 more for this? And this actually has a two-part answer. First, at the time, one of the most sought-after sets was the original UCS Millennium Falcon, but at the time, it was selling for thousands and thousands of dollars. If you wanted to buy an original UCS Millennium Falcon, you were going to spend over $2,000 on it. And that set came out back in 2007, and at the time was also the largest LEGO set ever made, containing just over 5,000 pieces. 12 years had passed since then, and a lot of people still wanted that UCS Millennium Falcon. So when it was re-released, and keep in mind that it was re-released at the time that The Last Jedi was about to come out, which, regardless of what you think of the movie, was still a huge time for Star Wars, people immediately were interested. The original version was $500 and also one of the most expensive LEGO sets ever at the time, so they already knew that this one was going to be up there too, especially since it was more pieces. But that is actually the second justification for the price, because when the new UCS Millennium Falcon was released, it was the single largest LEGO set ever. So not only would you be getting the most iconic ship from Star Wars, a ship that has an interior and comes with the minifigures for both the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, is basically minifig scale, and you can swap it out to be either version that you want, but it's also the largest LEGO set ever created. Just the prestige of having that alone really helped justify the price for a significant amount of people. But then LEGO kind of destroyed that by releasing other larger sets, which in itself would actually be okay if it wasn't for one thing. See, the LEGO Titanic? Totally fine. I think this is an awesome set. I hope to get it one day. Okay, and before anyone comments on it, 9,000 pieces for $680 is much more worth it than 6,000 for $600. And then you have something like the Coliseum, which is also over 9,000 pieces. Both of these builds are pretty incredible and definitely worth the price when they're both $600. Still ridiculously expensive, but you're getting almost 10,000 pieces out of it. And then there's the actual current largest LEGO set in the world, which is the world. And it's just ugly. Like, this is probably one of the single worst LEGO sets that I have ever seen, and I cannot believe that not only did they release it, but that now it holds the title for largest LEGO set. Because, honestly, that takes away from the prestige of the actual other worthwhile builds. Like, now, if you have the Millennium Falcon, you no longer have the largest LEGO set in the world. Even if you owned the original one, well, you couldn't say that anymore, but it got replaced by a newer, better version of itself. You can't say that with the Falcon anymore, because now you can go, well, it used to be the largest LEGO set, but now it's this ugly thing. So, okay, what exactly am I trying to say with all of this? Well, it's pretty simple. The reason that the Millennium Falcon sold so well and continues to sell pretty well are no longer relevant to it or really any of the other UCS sets that have come out since. While you could easily argue that the Star Destroyer is one of the most recognizable ships from Star Wars as well, if not like the most over the Falcon, $7,000 for 400 pieces was pretty hard to justify for a lot of people. there's a reason that it's being retired already. And you can tell me about, like, the larger pieces of plastic and all that, and I get it. Like, no, seriously, believe me, I do actually understand that. But it still feels like Lego was really pushing it with that to see if people would really be willing to buy it. But again, it was an updated version to a set that had been released in 2003. It was significantly better, more pieces, and held a huge blueprint. Like, it is a pretty massive set. And then we got the AT-AT. Now, once again, a pretty iconic vehicle, but this is not a re-release, and also only 5,000 pieces. Now, remember what I said about the original UCS Falcon being 5,000 pieces? That sold for $500, and then was actually later discounted because it didn't sell that well. But $500 in 2007 is the equivalent of $700 in 2022. And again, while this is a really great set, it's just incredibly expensive. But at least those are still iconic ships from a movie franchise that has been out for almost 50 years now. Okay, like 45 years, but that's almost 50. People spanning over 3 generations have been able to see all 3 of these vehicles in their movies for years now, and they're able to, like, connect to each other and actually, like, bond over simple things like this. I know it sounds weird, but I mean, it happens. My dad's favorite show is Star Trek, and him and I have literally spent hours just talking about the different versions of the Enterprise. And I mean, how many times have you had conversations of, like, oh, who would win, the Falcon or this, or, like, literally just anything about these ships? Like, the original trilogy will always hold a special place in every Star Wars fan's heart. Even if it's not your favorite, it still has that little bit of specialness to it because it's what started everything. But then we got this. And this, quite honestly, does not hold the same prestige or meaning as anything else that I just showed you, and that is regardless of whether or not you think that the Razor Crest is a really cool or awesome thing, or whether or not you like The Mandalorian. And that's because The Mandalorian just has not had the time to develop in the same way as the Star Wars original trilogy. Right now, currently, today, the Razor Crest and the Mandalorian are pretty well liked, they're pretty well known, it's an awesome thing, especially with Season 3 coming out soon. But what about in 5 years? What about in 10 years? What about in 45 years? Are people going to be hyping the Razor Crest in the same way that they will a Falcon or a Star Destroyer or an AT-AT? And I think the answer is gonna be no. Now, I absolutely love the Mandalorian TV show. I am so hyped for Season 3. I cannot wait for it. But this was a really weird choice. I mean, I know several people who are just absolutely in love with Star Wars and just haven't seen The Mandalorian because, well, it's on Disney+, and that's a huge issue right there. The thing that this is from is behind a paywall, whereas Star Wars movies pretty much aren't. Like, you're gonna still see them just on TV. I mean, no one watches TV anymore, but you know what I mean. It's a really weird choice, is all I'm trying to say. Because while it is recognizable to fans of The Mandalorian, it's not really as iconic as something like the Falcon or any of the other ships, like I said. There's also, you know, Season 2, which is like, why did they make this then? But then there's also the peace side of things, where it's like, not actually that big of a set anymore. Now that we've had things like the Falcon, like the Titanic, like the Coliseum, like the world map, this is just a big set but the piece count isn't quite as attractive as, again, something like the Falcon was. So honestly, $600 for 6,100 pieces is not a bad price. I mean, $600 is still expensive, don't get me wrong. Whether or not we can justify it, it is still expensive. But this, quite honestly, did not need to be a $600 set. And I think because they have been getting away with it since the Falcon came out, LEGO intentionally tried to make this a bigger set so that it could be more expensive. But quite honestly, I don't even think it's that good of a set. So if you have watched my channel for any length of time, well, then you probably don't know this, which is definitely why you should hit that subscribe button so you can know when videos like the ones I'm about to talk about come out, because I like to show off a lot of custom builds. And two of my absolute favorite builds were both models of the Razor Crest, one from Papa Glop and one from Jarek/Brick Vault. Both of them contain significantly fewer pieces than this one, both of them rounding around the 4,000 piece mark. And in my opinion, both of them look significantly better than the official LEGO one. So it really did not need to be 6,000 pieces, because that's been proven on multiple occasions now. And again, you can get your choice of with interior or without. Watch the videos, it makes sense. So I really don't know where all of those extra pieces are going here, especially when they're not used for things like some of these yellow lines, which are stickers in a $600 set, which is inexcusable. I know about the rumors for future sets, but that doesn't really matter. Besides, it said only plaques, not actual stickers. Regardless, the UCS Razor Crest will come with stickers. But also, because it's not even a complete ship. If you look at the underside, there is no underside. It's completely unfinished and just wide open. I legitimately cannot think of any other Ultimate Collector's Series set which has done that. Like, sure, there are some that don't necessarily have detailed undersides, but this is not just lacking detail, it's unfinished. And part of that is because this is meant to sit on the landing gear, which is non-retractable, meaning that you cannot display this in flight mode. It has to be like this. Sure, it's LEGO, you can modify it, but out of the box, this is how it's meant to be displayed, which really limits both posability and viewability. Again, there are like aftermarket things for that, but that doesn't matter because this is the product that we are getting from LEGO. But also, there are so many gaps in this thing. Like, look, gaps right there on the wing, pretty obvious to see. And for an Ultimate Collector Series set that costs $600, that's just kinda bad. Okay, also, on a very slight side note, this is an actual picture from the Razor Crest listing on Lego.com as of today, which is September 26, 2022. This is how much they care about this. I think that this is a decent looking build, but not something that is a great build. Not something like the Falcon. This is not something that I think is worth the $600 for this. Like, that is a stupid amount of money. And Mike from The Cool Factor, which is a channel you should definitely go check out and subscribe to, honestly, he put it best when he described this as
another $600 gray paperweight.
Because, like it or not, that's what most of these sets end up being. They are collector sets, not necessarily meant to be played with. Which actually does remind me about one more quick point that I wanted to make with the underside. I know that a lot of people are probably going to go, oh, but you can't see it, so it's not really that big of an issue. But you cannot tell me that, and then in the same breath, praise that there is an interior. Okay, don't get mad, because I know it's not necessarily the same, but the majority of the time that this is on display, you're not going to see the inside. The Falcon has an interior that I barely open up and really have only shown to people when they come over. Papa Glop's Razor Crest has a full interior that I have never really looked at because, well, I just like having this thing on display, and doing it is quite a bit of a hassle. Now, the official LEGO version is designed to be easier to get inside of, but again, this is not a play thing, this is a display thing, so you're probably not going to be doing that all too much. So while you don't see the bottom, and I know that the pieces that could have gone into finishing that probably went into the interior, it's still a strike against a $600 set. The UCS sets used to be this thing that you could look forward to twice a year. Twice a year, you would get a $200 set that was a vehicle or something really cool from Star Wars. But those days are just gone now. Because now, you might get a UCS set, but then you'll probably also get a Master Builder set. You might get a $200 set. You might get that because while Luke's Speeder was $200, the other 3 most recent sets, including the Razor Crest, haven't been. And it's not like the prices have gone up slightly. Something like the Gunship is already a pretty big leap for UCS sets, going from $200 to $350. But 3 out of the last 6 UCS sets have been over $500. That is over twice the amount that they used to be, really making it significantly harder to justify the purchase. And it's not like we're lacking for options anymore. There are a ton of really awesome LEGO sets out there right now, and to be completely honest with you, there are a significant amount of non-LEGO or custom sets out there right now. I mean, if you're willing to spend $600 on a Razor Crest, there are better options out there. Some of them, like if you want to go the authentic LEGO route, are going to be a little more expensive depending on the pieces that you already have. Or if price is much more of a concern and you just see these as plastic, which you really should because the LEGO logo doesn't really mean anything, then you can always go the non-LEGO route and get them for significantly cheaper. For instance, Jarek's version is only like $200 or so. Please support the original designers, links to that are in the description down below. So, with all of this ranting done, unfortunately, I don't think these expensive sets are gonna go anywhere. I really don't think the Razor Crest is going to sell well. I think it'll sell okay, but we're probably not going to see it on shelves for anything more than like a year or 2. And a lot of that's probably because this is a show that's going to pass its time. And also the fact that it got blown up. Sorry if you didn't know that and you made it 22.5 minutes into this video. Sorry for the spoilers, but yeah. So it is almost midnight. I am done ranting and I still need to edit this video, but I would love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. I would love to know what you think about this, if you're interested in even buying it, or if you think it's way too expensive. Let me know all that down below. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button for future videos, and consider checking me out on Instagram, Discord, and of course on Patreon, where you can help make videos like this possible. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.